This video is the Georgia Milestones Math Assessment Review. In this video, we're going to review the number system, which is Unit 1, and we will be doing these problems. Numbers 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 8, 21, 33, and 39. And those are the only problems that we will be doing in this video. So if you look at the first part of your book, okay, practice book right here, you have a formula sheet. Okay, you can use this one or you can use the one that I've given you in class. The one that I've given you in class is going to be exactly like the one that's on the milestone, so I would probably use that. You look at section 1, part A. In part A, you may not use a calculator for this part of the test. Okay, so we're not going to use a calculator, and for these few questions, and it's only the first 8 questions, and then after 8, you can get to section 1, part B, which you can use a calculator on. So we're going to do all of these without a calculator. If you look at number 1, just which number is equivalent to negative 3/8. Okay, and I notice that all of my answer choices are decimals. Okay, so to change a fraction into a decimal, I need to divide. I divide my numerator by my denominator. Okay, so my numerator, which is 3, always goes inside the house. Okay, and my denominator always goes on the outside. All right, and then I'm going to just divide. So 8 will not go into 3, so I need to add a decimal in the 0. 8 goes into 30 3 times, which is 24. I'm going to subtract, and I'm left with 6. I'm going to add a 0 and bring it down. 8 goes into 67 times, it's 56. You subtract, I'm left with 4. Add another 0 and bring it down, and 8 goes into 45 times. Okay, now I'm going to check. This was a negative fraction, so my decimal needs to be negative. And if you look at my answer choices, I have 2 positive decimals, so I can go ahead and eliminate those. I know those aren't going to be correct. And my decimal was negative 0.375,000, so the correct answer is C. Number 2, a company stock begins the week with a price of $43.85 per share. The price changes by $2.70 each day for 2 days. Then the price changes by negative $1.10 each day for 2 days. On the last day, the price changes by negative $4.45. And the question asks, what is the price per share of the company stock after those 5 days? So I want to start with $43.85 is my original amount. Okay, the price changes by $2.70 each day for 2 days. This is a positive amount, so it's going to go up. So first of all, I need to find out how much $2.70 for 2 days is. So it would be $2.70 times 2. Is it changed by $2.70 for 2 days? So I multiply. 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times 7 is 14. Carry 1, and then 2 times 2 is 4 plus 1 is 5. I have 2 decimal places, so it'd be $5.40. Now, since it changes by $2.70 each day for 2 days, I'm going to add that $5.40. So now my price, I would add these together. 5 and 0 is 5, 8 and 4 is 12. Bring down your decimal, don't forget about your decimals. 5 plus 3 is 8, plus 1 is 9. And bring down your 4. So now my total is $49.25. Then the price changes by negative $1.10 each day for 2 days. So since it's a negative, it's going to be coming down, so I'm going to be subtracting. So I need to find out how much $1.10 for 2 days is. So I would take $1.10 and multiply that by 2 because it happened 2 days. So 2 times 0 is 0, 2 times 1 is 2, and then 2 times 1 is 2. I got 2 decimal places, so 1, 2, I get $2.20. So I'm going to subtract, because it's a negative, $2.20. So 5 minus 0 is 5, 2 minus 2 is 0, bring down your decimal. 9 minus 2 is 7, and then bring down your 4. But now my total is $47.05. But on the last day, the price changes by negative $4.45. So again, it's going to fall, so I'm going to subtract $4.45. So 5 minus 5 is 0. I can't do 0 minus 4, so I have to borrow. Change this to a 6. Make this into a 10. 10 minus 4 is 6. Bring down your decimal. 6 minus 4 is 2. And then bring down your 4. So after the 5 days, the total is $42.60. And that answer choice is choice A. Okay, now number 3 says what value of x makes this equation true? Okay, now if I look at my problem here, 6 and x are together. That means I'm multiplying those two. So I've got 6 times x, and then I'm going to divide that by negative 4. This side of my equation has to equal this side of my equation, which is 6 times negative 1/2. Well, I need to figure out what this side of the equation equals first before I can see what this side of the equation would be. So I'm going to leave the left side exactly the same. So I have 6x divided by negative 4 equals, and I have 6 times negative 1/2. So in order to multiply a whole number by a fraction, I need to change this whole number into a fraction. I do that by putting it over 1. And then I'm going to multiply it by negative 1/2. So remember, when you multiply fractions, you just multiply straight across. So I get 6x over negative 4 equals 6 times negative 1 is negative 6, and then 1 times 2 is 2. Okay? Now negative 6 over 2 is an improper fraction. So I'm going to change that. So to change that, I would take 6 and divide it by 2. Okay, numerator always goes in the house, denominator always goes on the outside. 2 goes into 6 3 times. So I'm left with a negative 3. I have a negative 6 here. So 6x divided by negative 4 equals negative 3. So what I have here is actually a two-step equation. So I'm going to draw my line, okay? Now I've got to get rid of everything that's on the side with my x here. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of the negative 4 first because it's not attached to the variable. So I'm dividing by negative 4, so I have to do the opposite of that, which is to multiply by negative 4. I'm going to multiply both sides by negative 4. My negative 4's cancel out over here. I'm left with 6x equals negative 3 times negative 4 is positive 12. And then I'm going to divide both sides by 6, and I get x equals 12 divided by 6 is 2. So my answer there is C. Okay, and then I can plug this my answer in to the equation to make sure it is true. If I did it correctly, then my answer should be negative 3. So I have 6 times 2 divided by negative 4. Well, 6 times 2 is 12, and if I take 12 and divide it by negative 4, I get negative 3, which is what I've got on this side. So I know I did it correctly. Okay, for our next problem, I'm going to go to number 5. It's at 3 p.m. The outside temperature was 4 degrees Fahrenheit. The temperature then fell steadily by 2 degrees Fahrenheit every hour for the next 4 hours. What was the temperature at 7 p.m.? Okay, so it started at 4 degrees Fahrenheit. That's where it started. Then it fell. So now I'm going to be subtracting here. 2 degrees every hour for the next 4 hours. Okay, well, if it fell, that means my 2 is going to be a negative 2. And it fell every hour for the next 4 hours. So I could take negative 2 and multiply it by 4. Negative 2 times 4 is negative 8. That means it fell 8 degrees in 4 hours. So if it's falling, that means I need to subtract. So I'm going to take my original temperature, which was 4 degrees, and I'm going to subtract 8 from it. Okay, well, 4 is less than 8, so I can't subtract them. So I'm going to use my integer rules and do keep, change, change. So 4 stays the same, subtraction becomes addition, and I'm going to change 8 to its opposite, and the opposite of 8 is negative 8. Okay, now following the integer rules, I've got a positive plus a negative. Okay, they're different signs, so I'm going to subtract these two numbers. 8 minus 4 is 4. I'm going to take the sign of the largest number. 8 is bigger than 4, and it's negative, so my answer is going to be negative. So the temperature at 7 p.m. was negative 4 degrees Fahrenheit, which is D. If you look at number 6, we find, it says, how is the difference 14/15 minus 5/9 written as a decimal? Okay, in order to subtract fractions, I have to have a common denominator. Okay, if you're not sure just by looking at 15 and 19, what number they have in common, write out all the factors. So write out all the factors of both. So I got 9, 18, 27, 36, 45, 54. You can write out a couple and then stop. And then for 15, I got 15, 30, 45, 60, 75. Okay, so then I look at which one, if I have any numbers that are the same. I see that they both have 45 in common. So that is my common denominator. So 45 minus something over 45. Okay, so if I look at 15, okay, I'm going to see how many times it takes me to get from 15 to 45. So this would be 1, 2, 3. So I need to multiply 15 times 3 to get to 45. Well, if I multiply the bottom, I have to multiply the top also by 3. So then I'm going to take 14 and multiply it by 3. So 14 times 3, 3 times 4 is 12. Here's my 1, 3 times 1 is 3, plus 1 is 4. So I get 42. Okay, then I'm going to do my ninth. I'm going to see how many times it takes me to get to 45. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to multiply top and bottom here by 5. 9 times 5 is 45. 5 times 5 is 25. Okay, so I'm going to do 42 over 45 minus 25 45ths. So I'm going to subtract 42 minus 25. I have to borrow. And 12 minus 5 leaves me with 7. And then 3 minus 2 is 1. So I get 17 45ths. Okay, well, as you can see, that's not an option because they want it as a decimal. So I'm going to have to divide 17 by 45. Okay, so my numerator goes in the house. My denominator goes on the outside. Okay, 45 won't go into 1. It won't go into 17. Okay, so I need to add a decimal and a 0. Now 45 into 170. I'm not sure right off the bat, but let's try 6 times and see if we get close. 45 times 6 is 5 times 6 is 30. Then 6 times 4 is 24. Plus 3 is 27. So I'm way too high here, so I'm going to come down, multiply it by 3. 45 times 3. So 3 times 5 is 15. And 4 times 3 is 12, plus 1 is 13. Okay? And that's as close as I'm going to get without going over. So 45 goes into 173 times, which is 135. Okay? So then I would subtract here. Got to borrow. 10 minus 5 is 5. 6 minus 3 is 3. Add a 0. Okay? So 45 goes into 350. I did 45 times 6 and got 270, so I'm going to try a higher number than that. I'm going to do 45 times 7. Okay, 5 times 7 is 35. And my 3. 7 times 4 is 28. Plus 3 is 31. Okay, that's as close as I'm going to get there. So I would do a 7. 7 times 45 is 315. So I would subtract again. And I get 3. 10 minus 5 is 5. Add a 0 and bring it down. So I get 350. 7 is as close as I get, which is 315. Subtract again. I get 3, 5. Bring down my 0. Okay, so I can see now I'm going to take it out 3 times. And I can see that it's going to repeat. So after I've taken it out 3 times, I can stop there, and I'm going to have 3 and 7/10, 3 and I want to have 37 hundredths with the 7 repeated, which would be 8. Okay, so then number 8, that's the last one without a calculator. Number 8 says, because of the drought, the water in the reservoir was at a height of negative 11 inches compared to its normal level. It started raining again, and the water level rose by a ½ inch each month for 7 months, before dropping by 2 1/4 inches each month for the 3 summer months. What was the height of the water in the reservoir compared to its normal level at the end of the 10 months? Okay, well, this problem is very wordy, and it's got a lot of numbers in it. So we're going to take it one part at a time. So the original amount was negative 11. So that's the number we're going to start with. It's negative 11. Okay, it started raining again, and the water level rose. So if it rises, that means it's increasing, which means I'm going to be adding. So it rose by 1 inch each month for 7 months. Okay, so I need to take 1 inch and multiply it by 7 because it happened each month for 7 months. So I have 1/2 times 7. Now, to make, since 7 is a whole number, I need to make it a fraction, so I'm going to put it over 1. Okay, so 1 times 7 is 7, and then 2 times 1 is 2. So I get 7/2. Okay, so I'm going to add 7/2 to negative 11. Okay, then it says before dropping, so since it drops, I know I'm going to be subtracting by 2 1/4 inches each month for the 3 summer months. Okay, so it dropped 2 1/4 inches for 3 months. So I need to take 2 1/4 and multiply it by 3. Okay, now I can't multiply a mixed number here, so I'm going to change this to an improper fraction. Okay, to change it to an improper fraction, you multiply the denominator by the whole number, and then you add the numerator. So 4 times 2 is 8, plus 1 is 9. So I get 9/4 times, and then 3, I'm going to make it into a fraction by putting it over. Okay, so 9 times 3 is 27. 4 times 1 is 4. So I get 27/4. Now it drops, so I'm going to be subtracting 27/4. Okay, so there's my problem. Now I've got a whole number and then 2 fractions. Okay, so I need to make all of these have the same denominator. So if I make negative 11 into a fraction, I would put it over 1 plus 7/2 minus 27/4. Well, my common denominator between 1, 2, and 4 would be 4, and that one's pretty easy to see. So I'm going to change all of these to 4s. Now, since 27 is already in 4s, it's going to stay the same. Okay, so to get from 1 to 4, I multiply by 4. So I multiply the top by 4 also. So 1 times 4 is 4. And then negative 11 times 4 is negative 44. And then to get from 2 to 4, I multiply by 2. I'm going to multiply top and bottom there by 2. 2 times 2 is 4. And 7 times 2 is 14. Okay, now that I have all the same denominators, I can either add or subtract those. So I'm going to focus on my first 2 numbers here. That's all I can do at one time. I've got a negative plus a positive, so my integer rules tell me those are different signs. So I'm going to subtract those. So 44 minus 14 leaves me with 30. So I get negative 30, because 44 is bigger than 4, so I have to keep my negative sign. Negative 34 minus 27 fourths. Okay? Now I've got a negative and subtraction. I can't do that, so I'm going to have to keep change here. So I've got negative 34ths, change subtraction to addition, and change 27 to its opposite, which is negative 27 fourths. Okay? So I got two negative numbers and I'm adding them together. So I just add them together and keep the sign. So negative 30 plus negative 27 gives me negative 57 fourths. Okay, this is an improper fraction. That's not one of my answer choices. I have to change this into a mixed number. I do that by dividing. Okay, 57 on the inside of the house, since it's my numerator, 4 on the outside. 4 goes into 5 one time. Then I get a 1, bring down the 7. 4 goes into 17 4 times. 4 times 4 is 16, and I'm left with 1. Now, since I'm changing this into a fraction, I'm going to keep my remainder here. Okay, so your quotient up here is your whole number. The remainder is your numerator, which is 1, and then your denominator would be your divisor here, which is 4. So you get 14 and 1/4. It's negative 57 fourths, so it would be negative 14 and 1/4 inches, which would be C. Okay? Now, for the rest of our problems, you can use a calculator on those. And that would be with number 21. Okay, but look at number 21. It's a two-part problem. It says to simplify the expression using multiplication and division. Show your work and write your answer in the space provided. Okay, now yes, you can put this in your calculator just like you see it here and get the right answer. Okay, but you're not going to get any credit for this problem on the milestones if you just write an answer here. It wants you to show your work of how you got that answer. You can definitely use the calculator to check yourself to see if you got the right answer or not. Okay, so if we look at this, I've got multiplication, okay, because I've got a number right beside parentheses, and then I've also got division. Okay, I'm going to follow the order of operations. Remember, my order of operations is PEMDAS. Okay, parentheses first. So I'm going to do what's inside of parentheses. So I've got negative 5/8 is going to stay the same, and I'm going to divide negative 4/5 by 2. Okay, well, 2 needs to be a fraction, so I'm going to write it over 1. 2 over 1. Okay, well, I know I can't divide fractions, so I have to keep change flip. So when I keep change flip, I get negative 5/8 stays the same. I'm going to keep negative 4/5. Change division and multiplication. I'm going to flip this fraction here, so this becomes 1/2. Okay, and then I'm just going to multiply straight across. So negative 4 times 1 is negative 4. And then 5 times 2 is 10. Okay, so there's my division. I did that. Now it says, now I have to multiply these two fractions together because they're separated by parentheses only. So you just multiply straight across. Negative 5 times negative 4 is positive 20. And then 8 times 10 is 80. Okay, now it says to simplify it. So I've got to simplify it as much as possible. Okay, so I've done the multiplication. Now I've got to simplify. So 20 and 8. Well, I know since they both end in zeros, I can either divide them by 5 or 10. And 10 is the biggest number there, so I'm going to divide them both by 10. 20 divided by 10 gives me 2. And 80 divided by 10 gives me 8. Okay? Now 2 and 8 are both even numbers, so I know I can divide those by 2. And 2 divided by 2 is 1. And 8 divided by 2 is 4. So there's my fraction simplified. Okay? Now, if you put this in your calculator, if you put the problem in your calculator, and you put it in exactly like you see it here, you should get 1/4 in your calculator. So that's a good way to check yourself. Okay, part B is the same way, except this time we have a whole number on the outside. So it's going to stay there. I've got negative 5/6 divided by 2/3 on the inside of my parentheses. Okay, so just like in my first problem, I'm going to follow my order of operations here. Parentheses first. Okay, so I've got 4 times negative 5/6 times keep, change, and then flip 2/3 becomes 3/2. So 4 stays on the outside. Negative 5 times 3 is negative 15. And then 6 times 2 is 12. Okay, I've got a whole number times a fraction here. Okay, so I'm going to take 4 and make it into a fraction by putting it over 1. And then multiplying it by negative 15, 12. Then I'll multiply straight across. 4 times negative 15 gives me negative, keep up with your signs, negative 60 over 12. 1 times 12 is 12. Okay, so then I'm going to take and change this improper fraction to a mixed number here. So I'm going to take 60 and divide it by 12. Numerator always in the house, denominator always on the outside. Let's see how many times will 12 go into 60. Okay, 12 goes into 60 5 times. 5 times 2 is 10, carry 1, 5 times 1 is 5, plus 1 is 6. Okay, so it goes in exactly 5 times. So my answer would be negative 5. Keep up with your sign all the way through to the end. Okay, I got a negative divided by a positive, so my answer is going to be negative. Okay, then we're going to flip all the way over to number 33. I'm at the bottom here. So the balance in Dan's bank account is negative $12.50. Then he deposits $12.50 into his account. What's the new balance? Okay, so he starts with negative $12.50. Deposit means to add. So I'm going to add $12.50. Okay, now I've got a negative and a positive number that are opposite of each other. Okay, these are called additive inverses. Remember we talked about additive inverses. Okay, and additive inverses always equal 0. Okay, so my answer here is 0. Since these numbers are opposite of each other, negative and a positive, they're the same numbers, just one's negative and one's positive. They're additive inverses, and additive inverses always equal 0. So his new balance is $0. And our last problem for this video is number 39. And it says, what is the distance between negative 3 and negative 12 on the number line? Okay, so distance, you're going to represent how far it is apart. So you can subtract these two numbers here, or you can show it on the number line. Okay, if you subtract negative 3 minus negative 12, okay, you're finding the distance between the two. So I've got a subtraction and some negatives. I cannot do that. Okay, so I've got to keep, change here. I've got to turn subtraction into addition. So I've got negative 3, I'm going to keep it. Change subtraction to addition, and change negative 12 to its opposite, which is just positive 12. Okay, now I've got an addition problem with different signs, so I'm going to subtract those two numbers from each other. 12 minus 3, and leaves me with 9. 12 is bigger than 3, so I'm going to take its sign, which is positive. So the distance there is 9, which is B. Now another way you can solve that problem is to draw a number line. Okay, now on the number line, negative 12 is farther to the left than negative 3. So negative 12 would be here, and I would count backwards or back up to 0 until I get to negative 3. Okay, and then all I have to do is start at negative 12 and jump and see how many times I've jumped. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now, since I went to the right, that's in the positive direction, so the distance is positive 9. And that's all of the problem for this video.